What's going on, you guys? Today we're back with another video, and as you've seen in the title, I'm going to tell you guys why I decided to finally pick up the Sony FX6. And let's get straight into it. So I know one of the biggest debates going on in our industry is, does gear matter? And for me, I feel like it personally does, but we'll get into that discussion a little bit later. But before we get into that, I want to give you guys a little bit of background of who I am. My name is Tommy. I'm a professional photographer and videographer here out in Atlanta, Georgia. And I've been doing this for almost a decade now. And for most of my career, I've been shooting on my Sony a7 IV, which is actually filming me right now. And I've used that camera to go extraordinary places. I've been all across the world. I've been to Kenya, I've been to South Africa, and I've been able to get it done with my a7 IV. And it's gotten me a lot of gigs and I've made a lot of great money with it. But there's always a certain point to where I feel like your gear can kind of hold you back. And that's what I started to feel like with my a7 IV. And so that's the first reason I decided to pick up this Sony FX6. First reason being is I started to get a lot of gigs where I would be hired as a cinematographer, basically meaning they would hire me just to shoot whatever content that they want me to capture, and I wouldn't have to take care of any post-production, I wouldn't have to take care of any editing, and I wouldn't have to do too much planning beforehand. I pretty much just show up with my gear, shoot, and then I head home, I get paid. And I started to get a couple more of those gigs, and for those gigs here and there, I would go ahead and rent the Sony FX6 from friends or from ShareGrid or from different rental houses around Atlanta. And I started to realize that the money I'm spending renting out, I could go ahead and start saving it and buy it for myself. And if you want all the technical specs, this is going to be one of those videos. I'm sorry to tell you, I'm a guy that doesn't really care too much about the technical specs. I really just want to know how well is it going to be useful for me in my day-to-day use. So the first reason on that list of why I decided to pick up the FX6 is the full frame look. I was debating between this and something like a Komodo, but I'm just a really big fan of the full frame look. I love the way the blurred background looks. I just love being able to get a really wide lens and being able to max out on that whole entire space. And so that's one of the main reasons why I decided to go with the FX6 over something like a Komodo or any other cinema cameras. And it's a Sony camera. I've been using Sony since I started my career, so I have all of my Sony lenses that are easily adaptable from my a7 IV straight to the FX6, no problem. And another feature, I'm just gonna go ahead and list off some of my favorite features, is the XLR port. I know there's a lot of people saying they don't like that you only get the XLR audio input through the handle, but for me, I am coming from a camera that didn't have any XLR ports at all, so I appreciate it. They go right here into these two slots, and what I do is if I'm using something like a DJI mic, I actually have a cord that I purchased on Amazon. I'll link it down below if you guys want to pick that up for anybody else that uses the FX6. But I pretty much plug this in and it goes right into my hot shoe, and I'm able to record audio with my DJI mics, my other Rode mics that take 3.5 millimeters, so I don't have to worry about that. Next on that list would be the body style. Now this body style I'm a big fan of. It's like square, it's boxy. It's not like a traditional DSLR or mirrorless. So when you show up to set with this camera, people already assume that, okay, like he's a professional at what he does. I know we hate to say it, but it's the honest truth, you know. Sometimes you need to show up in a way that can differentiate you from all the other videographers, and picking up a cinema camera is one of the things that I wanted to do for myself. And last but not least, the number one feature on this camera that is absolutely life-changing is the variable ND. You guys, I cannot tell you how many times I feel so good picking up and filming with this camera just because I know I don't have to worry about variable NDs. I pretty much just set my settings, I turn on this variable ND, and it has this little scroll wheel here. So if you want to decrease your exposure, you just slide it down, increase it, slide it up. You don't have to fiddle with your f-stop, shutter speed, ISO. This is literally all I do throughout the day to change my exposure, and I absolutely love it. So the variable ND, it doesn't get talked about enough. Actually, it really does get talked about enough, but I just got to give it some more praise, because when you start using something like this, you'll realize how much of a game changer it truly is. And kind of going back into the perceived value is the production value that you get when you have something like this on set. You know, I can get great images and great footage out of my Sony a7 IV, but the production value of having an actual cinema camera on set, rigging it up, attaching a monitor, attaching microphones, attaching a V-mount battery, the production value that is perceived is so much higher than showing up with the mirrorless. Even though they might produce the exact same image and it's a very simple shoot they're using it for, when you show up with something like this, clients, they tend to treat you differently. Crazy enough, something that I actually do out here in Atlanta is I walk around with my Sony FX6 sometimes. If I'm going to a coffee shop just to edit, if I'm going to grab lunch somewhere, sometimes I'll just pick up my Sony FX6. Maybe I want to capture some footage, but oftentimes than not, when I go somewhere and I have this camera out, people come up to me like, hey, you know, like that camera looks nice. Like, what do you do? You know, like, are you a cinematographer? Do you work in movies? And it's just a great way to start a conversation. And actually, in some ways, I've gotten clients this way. They'll see my camera out, they'll see me editing, and they'll want to take my information down without seeing any work. It's so crazy. Without seeing any work, just by seeing me have a cinema camera, they'll come to me and start to give you work. It's crazy how it works. Comment down below if the same thing is happening to you, but I'm telling you guys, one of the easiest ways to actually get bookings and get clients is just to go places with your camera out. I promise you. People will come up to you just out of curiosity, whether it's somebody who is a photographer, wants to be a photographer, or actually has a gig that they're looking for a photographer for. I'm telling you, it works so many times. I cannot tell you guys enough. And I know there's cameras like the FX3, but for me, honestly, I love my A7 IV. I love the footage that I can get out of this camera. So I feel like having this and my A7 IV is the perfect 1-2 punch for me if I need an A cam and B cam. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll set this up for a handheld type of look, and I'll set my A7 IV up on my Ronin just to have an ease of use when I want to go from having a handheld shot to a stabilized shot, so I don't have to worry about rigging things up, taking this down, screwing things back on and off. I literally just put this camera down and pick another one up. And last but not least, I want to tell you guys about why I truly feel like gear matters. There comes a point in your career where I know people say that gear doesn't matter, you can get amazing shots with any old camera, and you know, to an extent that is true. But when it comes to this professional world, there becomes a standard of equipment that you need to have to get these type of jobs. I recently was hired, and the first thing they asked me is, what type of camera am I gonna shoot with? And if I would have told them like I'm gonna show up with a Canon T7i, they probably would have looked at me like I was crazy. Even if I use that camera to create beautiful images, beautiful footage, they would still look at me kind of crazy, because there's a standard level that not enough people on YouTube talk about, that in professional work there's a standard. There's a reason why a lot of people and photographers in the Olympics are using the latest Canon cameras, the latest Nikon cameras, the latest Sony cameras. And it's because these cameras have a level of performance that needs to be guaranteed for when you're at these type of shoots. And so having a cinema camera, as much as people like to say gear doesn't matter and gear this and gear that, I'm gonna be the first one to tell you that gear absolutely matters. If you guys are looking for a way to take your work to the next level, of course, understand lighting, understand cinematography. I mean, look, if we being honest, you guys could watch some of my tutorials, you know, if you wanna get your photography right. But if you really wanna take your work to the next level, upgrading your camera quality is a phenomenal way to do it. And that's just what I'm gonna tell you guys today. So that's pretty much it, you guys. I just wanted to hop on here to tell you guys a couple of reasons why I decided to pick up the FX6. If you have any questions for me on, you know, other reasons why I picked up the FX6, how do I feel about it, drop them in the comments below. And also, if you have anything to say about this video, just drop them down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you want to really support this channel, make sure you guys drop a like, comment, and subscribe. And until then, I'll see y'all next time. Peace.